There are only 2 points in time that we should really be concerned with. The first is right here and right now. And the second is at the hour of our death. And we are right here and right now. But the truth of the matter is, there ain't none of us going to make it out of this alive. 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity of attending a conference on end-of-life issues at the cathedral. This conference, along with today's readings, reminded me of a letter that came to me around this time last year. And I think it's important that I share it with you today. The letter begins, "To whom it may concern, I murdered my wife. It seemed at the time the right thing to do. I could see no other way out. After nearly 2 years of what seemed to be an unending nightmare, I had come to the conclusion that this would be the humane thing to do. She was in such misery, I didn't recognize her. We were always active in our community and enjoyed a very active social life. Then one night, it all changed. The doctor said she had a massive stroke, and she had permanent damage, and there was nothing they could do. So I brought her home to care for her. I arranged for caregivers, I reduced my work hours, and even arranged regular visits from our family doctor. But she really didn't improve much. On occasion, she would seem somewhat alert, but most of the time, she was just there. She had no pleasures in life, just daily routine of being taken out of bed, put in a chair, put back in bed, shower, doubly incontinent. It was just awful. It's not life. It's existence. And I knew she would not want that. As time went on, I became more and more discouraged and depressed. I could not stand to see the love of my life exist in this way. I quit all my social activities and spent all my free time caring for her. Even our friends quit coming around, and I rarely heard from them. I voiced my concern to my family doctor, and we agreed that this was not a dignified way for my wife to live. But he told me there were options. He said he could provide me with a way that would give my wife that peaceful death that she so deserved. And it would be between the two of us. At first I was reluctant. For several months I thought about it. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. This would be, after all, an act of love and compassion. My wife did not deserve to live in this undignified way. I knew if she was in her right mind, she would agree with me. So one day I called the doctor. He came by that evening and told me what to do. That night I sat up with my wife. I talked to her. I talked about how we met and our life together and all the good times we've had. I also told her how much I understood she was suffering, and I knew how much she disliked being a burden. I explained that I could help her end this pain and misery, and she seemed to understand, I think. Early that morning, I kissed my wife and administered the medications the doctor gave me. I was hoping she would go quickly, but it took much longer than I thought. She seemed to struggle to live, but the doctor told me that was normal. And finally, she passed away. I grieved, but I thought I would be able to move on with my life. But I was wrong. I kept thinking if anyone ever found out what I did, they would think I was a terrible person. But I found that there was a lot of support out there for what people call death with dignity. Even some Christian preachers supported the idea. Now there were others that were completely against this idea. But the only real consistent opposition came from the Catholic Church. One day I was reading a statement from a bishop, and something he said really bothered me. The bishop said to yield to such a request, to be killed or put out of misery, is false compassion. To have true compassion for the person is to realize that the person is hopeless, alienated from the community, and doubtful of God's love and mercy. The mercy killer is really adding a final rejection to the many rejections that have already driven a person to that point of despair. He went on to say, and this really stunned me, if the motives of the mercy killers are examined, the real motive may well be that the relative did not want to accept the responsibility of loving the dying person to the end. At that moment, I felt as if a knife had been thrust into my heart. Was that me? Was my motive to abandon my responsibility to my wife? I love my wife. I just didn't want her to suffer. Or was it that I didn't want to see her suffer? The bishop's words continued to haunt me, and I felt like I should take a closer look. But the messages I got were so mixed. Some Christian ministers condemned euthanasia, others supported it, and many were non-committal. I even heard a famous TV evangelist say that it was okay to divorce your wife who was suffering from Alzheimer's in order to seek companionship elsewhere. Well, I didn't abandon my wife. I never would. I needed some answers, but the only message that was consistent was from the Catholic Church. I called a friend and asked him who I could speak to about a very personal and confidential matter. He gave me the name of a number of the deacon at his parish, and I set an appointment. I was reluctant to say much at first, but he made me feel at ease, and I believed I could trust him. After a while, it all came pouring out. The struggles, heartache, the pain, the loss, and the guilt. The guilt. I realized I felt guilty for what I had done. Why would I feel guilty if what I had done was right? The deacon was silent for some time, and I feared he was going to let me have it, tell me that I was going to hell, and kick me out of his office. Finally, he said, everyone is responsible for his life before God, who has given it to him. It is God who remains the sovereign master of life. We are obliged to accept life gratefully and preserve it for his honor and the salvation of our souls. We are stewards, not owners, of the life God has entrusted to us. It is not ours to dispose of. It is in our natural being that we seek and desire to live. Suicide and in turn euthanasia go against every nature of our being. Those that are suffering, as well as their caregivers, can experience major depression during this struggle, especially when they are receiving little or no support from family and friends in the community. The pleas of the gravely ill people for euthanasia are almost always simply cries for help and love, rather than a true desire to die. Love is what is needed, and support from family, friends, and the loving community to help in making the right decisions when pain and loss of hope have blinded us from what is right and wrong. After several hours of discussion and prayer, I realized that I was deeply depressed and alienated, and I had no support from my friends or family or community. I also came to admit my culpability in my wife's death. It has been several years since I buried my wife. The pain and guilt I suffered in seeing and accepting the truth was tremendous, but the healing has been a blessing. I'm working through these issues with the help of the church and learning to accept the love and forgiveness that Jesus Christ has given me. I also pray that my wife forgives me and that she is in the best place ever, with no pain, no tears. A few months ago, I suffered a brain aneurysm, and has left me unable to move or to speak. I overheard some discussions about me between my children and my doctor. I don't know what they're planning, but I hope they can improve my situation. I have so much to make up for. I need more time to get to know God, to try to better understand his gift of I wish they would just sit with me and talk to me a while. I would like to just have a little more. And this is where the letter ends. I guess I wanted to share this letter with you because there are great needs in our society. And I pray that God will move each one of us to action in ministering to these needs. And Advent is a great time to start. There are lost and broken people, alienated and depressed in our county, in our city, in our neighborhoods, in our parish. We can find them down at Heritage Hall, nursing home. People that think they have outlived their usefulness, feel worthless, feel like a burden. We can find them at Open Hands Food Pantry and Kitchen. People that are poor and live on the margins of society, depressed because they cannot support themselves or their families. People in our parish or our community who are caregivers and have become depressed and alienated, like the man in the letter, and they see no way out. People in our community, no matter what age, that feel hopeless and doubt God's love. This Advent season, we're being called to help them, to visit them, to serve them. It doesn't take any special skills or talent. It just takes a willingness to open up and share God's love. St. Paul prays for us this Advent that the Lord will make us increase and abound in love for one another and for all. I wonder, can our love for these people increase to the point where we are moved to serve them? When Jesus comes, will we die of fright? Or will we be standing erect with our heads raised because he will find us serving our suffering brothers and sisters? Each one of us must answer this question, because there are only 2 points in time that we should be concerned with: right here, right now, in the hour of our death.